Hello and welcome back to my craft room. I have got something a little bit different for you today. I've been working on some Christmassy headbands for the shop where I work here in Norfolk in the UK. It's called So Simple. I will leave a link down below. So I've been working on making these Christmassy headbands. Here's one. Very fetching elf. Here's number 2, which is a poinsettia. Also very fetching. A cute reindeer. And the 4th one, so I've done 4 different ones. I'll show you on the desk here because I haven't finished assembling this one yet. I think this is going to be my favourite though. It's Christmas lights, obviously. I hope that's obvious. And what we're doing is we're going to put together these little kits. I started putting them together, so the kits will have everything you need to make one of these headbands for yourself, including the patterns, which I've just finished typing up. I've made up all the patterns myself, and I will include a link down below so that you can download a pattern yourself if you'd like to have a go at home. The kits would be great because they will have just the amount of wool and felt and what have you that you need, and also one of these plastic bands, which is the base, and 1 or 2 other bits and bobs like the beads and things to finish the headbands with. Other than that, all that will be needed is some glue. I used the tacky glue this time, but I could just as well have used this one, which I really like. Anything which you know will is fairly strong and will stick fabric and felt really. You'd also need a 3.5. I used a 3.5mm crochet hook with this double knit in wool, but it depends on your tension. You might need a number 4. Also a needle with an eye big enough to take the wool for stitching up later on. I like these chenille ones because they've got a large eye but a sharp point, but a tapestry needle would do as well, and I really like having a needle threader handy. This one's great for these bigger needles. Also some of them need stuffing, which will also be in the kits, but it's just like a polyester stuffing. So I think that's it. So I thought it might be useful to do a little video tutorial just to walk you through how to put these headbands together, because sometimes it's just easier to explain things visually, to show you how to do something rather than try and put it into words, especially for people who might not be quite so used to using crochet patterns. And they're really quite straightforward, and it's all using the same basic stitch, so it's perfectly doable. It's just sometimes easier just to show you. So enough waffling on, let's get started. I have got some red wool ready. I'm going to do one of these bulbs. I've got my 3.5mm crochet hook. One essential piece of equipment that I forgot to mention just now, absolutely crucial, is some kind of stitch marker. If you haven't got this kind of thing, one of those little clippy ones would do, or a safety pin, but just some way, because most of these pieces are worked in the round, so it's impossible, especially as the pieces get bigger, to keep track of where you are in the round. You really need to mark the last stitch in every round so you know where you are. So I've got my pattern ready. I'm going to work through that as I go, make sure it all makes sense and works properly, and I will explain the abbreviations and things as I go along, just for the benefit of anybody who's not quite so used to following these patterns. So to make these, as with most of the pieces in this little project, we're going to start with a magic ring. So wherever I've put MR in the pattern, that means a magic ring, and this is how I make a magic ring. I start with the tail of the yarn towards me. I lay the working end of the yarn over my 2 first fingers and then wrap it round quite loosely, not too tight, to form a cross shape like that. Then I put my hook underneath that bottom length of yarn, bring it up and over the top length of yarn, and I pull a loop through like that. That's kind of made my ring, and then I put the yarn around the hook and pull a loop through to make a chain. Wherever I put CH in the pattern, so in this case one chain, one CH, one ch is one chain. Apologies if I'm over explaining, but I just think it's, you know, somebody might be watching who's never done this before, and it's not obvious if you've never done it before. So here we go. Here's my ring, my tail end and my working end of yarn, and now I'm going to work the stitches over the ring and that tail end, so the tail end will be inside the stitches. So I'm going to put 4 double crochet stitches into this ring. I should point out that I'm using UK terms, so that's UK double crochet. In America, these would be single crochet, I believe, but here in the UK we call them double crochet. So to do a double crochet, I'm going to go underneath both lengths, both pieces of yarn. Well, actually all 3, because I've got the tail there as well. And then I'm going to pull a loop of the... I'm holding this a bit awkwardly because it's out at arm's length and underneath the camera. I'm going to pull a loop of yarn underneath the ring like that. So I've now got 2 loops on my hook, and then I'm going to put the yarn around the hook again and pull it through both of those stitches on the hook. So there we go, that's my first double crochet. So just to show you again, I'm going underneath both pieces, or all 3 pieces, pulling a loop through, so I've got 2 loops on my hook, yarn around the hook again and pulling it through both of those stitches on the hook. So that's 2 double crochet, 3 and 4. So now I've got 4 double crochet on my hook, and what I'm going to do now is pull gently but firmly on that tail to close up the ring. There we go. Okay, and this is where I'm going to use my stitch marker and pop it through that last stitch. So that I know when I get to the end of the round. Now with a really small round like this, I probably could have got away with not doing it, but you may as well just get used to doing it from the start, and then you're in the habit of it. So that's the kind of foundation ring done. Now I'm going on to round 1, and I've got to do 2 double crochet in the next stitch, and then 1 double crochet, and then repeat that sequence once. So if you're ever in doubt as to which the first in the round should be, you can always count back. So I know there should be 4 stitches here, so I'm counting the one I've got my stitch holder through. 1, 2, 3, 4. There's my first stitch. I'm ignoring this one here because it's actually the turning chain. So I'm going to go into that stitch, and it's just like we did into the magic ring. I'm going into the stitch, I'm pulling a loop through, so I've got 2 loops on the hook, yarn around the hook again, pulling a loop through. And now instead of going on to the next stitch, I'm going back into that same stitch again, pulling a loop through, yarn around the hook again, pulling the loop through both loops on the hook. So now I've done 2 double crochet into that 1 stitch, and then it's just 1 double crochet into the next stitch, 1. And now I've got to repeat that sequence, so I'm going to do 2. I've got 2 stitches left now, 1 and the one on the stitch holder. So I'm going to do 2 into this one because I'm repeating the sequence. 1, 2, and then 1 into this stitch. Let's take that holder out, and then just 1 double crochet into that stitch. And before I forget, I'm just putting my marker in the last stitch in the round, And at the end of every round in the pattern, I've put a number in brackets. That number in brackets is the number of stitches there should be in the round once you've finished that round. So in this case, after round 1, I've got the number 6 in brackets, so I should have 6 stitches in my round. So let's count. Hang on, let's see if I can. I'm explaining this in very simple terms because I'm kind of aiming it really at somebody who might never have followed a crochet pattern before. Let's get this in properly in the light so that you can see. There we go. So I've got the 1 on the hook. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So that number 6 is the first one in my next round. So I'm on to round 2. So it's again 2 double crochet in the next stitch and then 2 double crochet. And then repeat that sequence once. So the reason we're doing, it's probably obvious, but the reason we're doing 2 double crochet in one stitch is to increase it. So each one of these rows is increasing a couple of stitches because we're making the circle bigger. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There's my first stitch going. So for this first one, I'm going 1 double crochet, 2 double crochet into the same stitch, and then 1 in the next stitch and 1 in the next stitch. And now I'm repeating the sequence, so I'm doing 2 into this next one. 1, 2 double crochet into that stitch, and then 1, take the stitch holder out, and 1 in that last stitch. Put my marker in again. So now I should have 8 in the round. Let me just check. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Round 3 is 2 double crochet in the next stitch and then 3 double crochet. So 1, 2 in the same stitch, and now just 3 double crochets in the normal way. 1, next stitch, 2, next stitch, 3. Repeating the sequence, 2 in this next stitch, 1, 2 in the same stitch, and now 3 single, not single, 3 double crochets in the normal way. 1, 2, oops, 3. Mark that last stitch, and now I should have 10, because I got number 10 in brackets at the end of that row, at the end of that round. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So I know I'm in the right direction. So round 4, we're still increasing. So 1, 2 in that first stitch, and then 4 double crochets. 1, next stitch, 2, next stitch, 3, next stitch, 4. Repeating the sequence again, 2 in the next stitch, 1, 2 in the same stitch, and then 4. I've got 4 stitches left in the round, and I'm going to put 1 double crochet into each of them. 1, 2, 3, 4, and mark that last stitch. Okay, so I should now have 12 on my in the round. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Yes. So we finished increasing now. Round 5, we're just going to put a double crochet into each stitch in the round. No more increasing. 1, 2, 3, 10, 11, oops, do that one again, 11, last stitch in the round, 12, put my marker back in. So now we start decreasing. So to decrease, it's quite good that I've shown you this little piece first, because really all of the stitches you're going to use and all of the techniques are covered in this one tiny piece. It doesn't get more complicated. So if you can do this, you can do the whole, you can do any of these. Oh, don't want to lose that. So we're decreasing now, and what I've put is decrease 1 over the next 2 stitches, then double crochet 2, and repeat that sequence twice. So to decrease 1, you see this written various ways in different types of patterns, but this is how it makes sense to me. So to decrease 1 over the next 2 stitches, here are the next 2 stitches. You can see this is the one that's currently on the hook, and then you can see the next 2 stitches, this one and this one. So I'm still using double crochet. So I'm going to start my double crochet as usual, but I'm not going to pull through that. Normally I would pull through the hook again like that, wouldn't I? I'm not going to do that this time. I'm going to start it as usual, but stop at that stage. And then I'm going into the next stitch because I'm decreasing 1 over 2 stitches. Yarn around the hook and pull it through, and now I'm going to yarn around the hook again and pull it through all 3 stitches on the hook. So I've basically turned those 2 stitches into 1, and then the pattern says to just do 2 double crochet, straightforward double crochet. So 1 in the next stitch, 1 in the next stitch. And then I repeat that sequence twice more. So I'm going to decrease over these next 2 stitches again. So I'm going into the stitch, yarn around the hook, pull it through. But I'm not going on to complete that stitch. I'm now going into the next stitch, yarn around the hook, pull it through. And now I'm completing by yarn around the hook and pulling it through all 3 loops on the hook at the same time. So turning those 2 stitches into 1 again, and then 2 double crochet, 1, 2. And now this is the last repeat of that sequence. So these are the next 2 stitches. Yarn around the hook, pull it through. Oh, no, try that again. Yarn around the hook, pull it through. Don't complete the stitch, go into the next stitch, yarn around the hook, pull it through, and now complete by yarn around the hook again and pulling through all 3 loops on the hook, turning 2 stitches into 1, and then 1 double crochet in the next stitch and 1 double crochet in the last stitch of that round, and mark it. So I repeated that sequence 3 times altogether over that round, so I've decreased 3 stitches, so 12 stitches has now become 9, and I've got the number 9 in brackets at the end of this round. So let's just double check. So 1 is the one on the stitch holder, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Good. Now at this point I need to add some stuffing, and if you've got one of our little kits, the stuffing will be included. So I'm just going to poke some stuffing in there, and then I'll work the rest of the crochet around the stuffing. I want it fairly firm, but not, you know, not ridiculous. Just, yeah, just enough to kind of hold its shape, but not so it's bursting at the seams. So I've added the stuffing, and then for round 7 I'm going to decrease 1 over the next 2 stitches and then double crochet 1 and repeat that pattern twice. If you've got the pattern in front of you because you've got the kit or you've downloaded the pattern, you'll be able to follow along with what I'm saying, and hopefully it will make sense. If you've got any questions at all, please don't hesitate to leave a comment. I check my comments every day, so if you've got any questions I will come back to you and help you if I possibly can. So decrease 1 over the next 2 stitches. So this is the stitch that is on my hook. The next 2 stitches, let's get that stuffing out of the way so you can see. The next 2 stitches are this one and this one. So I'm going into this one first, yarn around the hook, pull it through, don't complete the stitch, go into the next one, yarn around the hook, pull it through, and now complete the stitch by yarn around the hook again and pulling it through all 3 loops on the hook, and then double crochet 1 in the next stitch. And now I'm going to repeat that sequence twice more. So yarn around the hook, pull it through, don't complete the stitch, go into the next stitch, yarn around the hook, pull it through, complete the stitch by yarn around the hook and pull it through all 3 loops on the hook like that, and then 1 double crochet. And I've got 1 more repeat, and you can see I've got 3 stitches left in my round, so that's ideal. That's decreased 1 over the 2 stitches again, and then the very last stitch in the round, just double crochet. And now all I'm going to do is, it just says slip stitches to close. So where you've got SL, that's slip. STS is stitches. So slip stitches to close. So to do a slip stitch, I'm just basically going to close this hole over. And it's a bit random really. I'm going to go keep this loop on the hook. I'm going to go kind of opposite it. And to do a slip stitch, you put the yarn around the hook and just pull it through both loops on the hook. And then I might just do another one here just to close that hole. There we go. And then once that's done, I can just snip off my ends and pull the yarn right through that last loop, pull it tight, and that just fastens it off. And now the last thing to do is to weave in the ends. So I'll just show you this once. It's probably pretty obvious. It's nice to see how these needle threaders work though if you haven't used one before. So you're probably familiar with the ones like this, little wire ones. Sometimes they've got like red plastic handles or different colour plastic handles. But these are more for using in the smaller eye needles. These are great for these bigger eye needles, and when you're going to be using a thicker yarn or embroidery thread. So you just put the end of this through the eye of the needle, which is really easy. Then you put the yarn through this giant hole, ever so much easier than trying to get it through the eye of a needle, and then you just pull like that. I mean, how easy is that? Absolute little treasure this is. So I am just gonna randomly, this isn't something that's going to get a lot of wear or whatever, so I'm not going to bother too much. I'm just going to weave the ends in and out a little bit and lose them inside the ball. Sometimes if I've ended up quite a big hole like that, I might come up there and just use this opportunity to close that hole up a little bit. It's not like we're making a garment and everything's got to be perfect. You don't want any sort of obvious ends sticking out, but you don't need to be too fussy about it either. So that's, now I've woven that in and out a few times and closed up a couple of holes, I'm just going to snip that out of the way. And I'll do the same with that one and take the opportunity to close this slightly bigger hole here. I'm sure this isn't a very scientific way of doing it, but it works for me. So, there we go. I'll just close that up a bit. And then just weave the ends in and out a bit and snip off the end. If you just pull it out just very slightly, cut it, and then the end will kind of shrink back in again. Okay. And I can kind of shape it a little bit if I need to. So that's my little light bulb shape. Quite cute. So I've shown you that one, and as I say, all of the stitches and techniques you need to do all of these things I've already, are basically included in that one little piece, so couldn't be easier really. So you can see that to make the little connectors, I used felt. I'll show you how I made the little connectors. So if you got one of the kits, your piece of felt will be 10 centimetres long. There we go. And 5 centimetres wide. So you need to cut this into 5 strips. I'm not going to bother measuring it because it's really not that crucial. 5 strips, which are one centimetre wide by 10 centimetres long. I'm going to be needing my glue, and then all I did was roll this up quite tightly. I want it to be pretty dense. Bit fiddly to start with, but then once you've got the roll going, it's pretty easy. Keep rolling, rolling, rolling. Try and keep the edges level so it doesn't kind of get a sticky out bit. So roll it nice and neatly, and once you get to about sort of 3 or 4 centimetres like that, just put a little line of glue. Like that, and keep rolling. A little bit more. There we go. Okay, so I had to make that one again because that first one escaped. So I'm just sort of giving that a nice little roll, making sure it's come out a nice shape. I've got a fairly nice neat little cylinder there, and all I did with these ones was I picked the whatever looked the more flat rounded off end as opposed to the more pointy end of this light, and I just glued, I put a good dab of glue on the end. This glue is getting a bit hard, squeeze. I think it needs a pokey tool. Right, so I've got a good dob of glue like that on it, and I'm pushing that into the light. And then I just left those alone to set up. And I did wonder if, you know, sticking felt to glue was going to be secure enough, and this was the glue I used, and they've come out really nice and firm, so that's really good. So that's the lights done. The next thing is to cover the headband. So with some of mine, or with one of them, I covered it with fabric and ribbon like that, which is quite good. You could do these and then just, you know, put some stars on or something and just make it, you know, not put a big crochet piece on. You could just make it a decorative headband to match an outfit or whatever. And then with some of them I did these crochet bands, which are really quick to do once you get used to them. So for the lights one, I used one of the skinnier bands. So this is about 1 centimetre wide, maybe slightly more. And I'm going to use the green wool because I thought it would be nice if it kind of looks like the branch of a Christmas tree with the cable wrapped around it, and the lights on it. So this is a slightly different pattern, but exactly the same technique. So I'm going to again start with a magic ring, so tail end of the yarn towards me, wrapping the working end around my 2 first fingers to make a cross, put my hook underneath the bottom length of yarn and over the top, pulling a loop through, yarn around the hook and pulling it through that loop to make my first chain. So that's my 1 ch. So MR is memory ring, 1 ch is 1 chain. That's what we got so far. And now again, like with the light bulbs, I'm going to do 4 double crochet in the chain. And I'm going to keep this tail end of yarn inside the stitches as well. So 1 double crochet, 2 double crochet, 3 and 4 double crochet. And bearing in mind that that's UK double crochet, in America that would be single crochet. Now I'm going to keep hold of these stitches just lightly and gently pull on that tail end to close up the ring. So for round 1 I'm going to do 2 double crochet in the next stitch and then 1 double crochet, and repeat that sequence once. So I'm starting off with 4 stitches, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. Let's point it with this. So I'm starting off with 4 stitches. 1, 2, 3, 4. And I want to end up with 6 to cover this narrow headband. So we're going to increase 2 stitches in this first round. This is my first stitch in the round. So I'm going 1 double crochet and another double crochet in the same stitch. And then I'm doing 1 double crochet in the next stitch. And then I'm repeating that sequence, so 1 double crochet, 2 double crochet in the same stitch, and then 1 double crochet in the next stitch. So let's count the stitches. So we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Now the reason you don't need to bother with the stitch holder this time is all I'm going to do is keep working round and round and round until my piece is long enough. and when I say keep working round and round and round, just one stitch, one double crochet in every stitch, and just keep doing that over and over again till it's almost long enough to cover that band. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, there's my first one. So I'm going double crochet, double crochet, double crochet, oops, if you're not sure, maybe at least to start off with, then it might be worth marking the end of your rounds and just make sure that you're still you're keeping to that 6 stitches in each round and not accidentally increasing or decreasing. But when you've been doing it for a little while, it's just very easy. You just make sure you go into every single stitch over and over and over again until you get to the length you want. So I'm going to keep going with this until I'm just a couple of centimetres from the end, from it being long enough to cover that band. It will take me, once I'm not trying to do it at arm's length, it will take me about 10 minutes. It's really quite quick. Okay, so I'm going to stop recording that and come back when I've got to that point. I'm just sort of coming to the point where it's time to put the plastic band inside this sleeve that I've made. Let's just try it for size again. Yeah. So I'm going to take that hook out for a minute. And this is a little bit fiddly to start with, but once it gets going, it's all right. Just going to wiggle that in. And you want it to be a reasonably snug fit. And it's pretty forgiving, it'll stretch a little bit or squish up a little bit if you've made it a little bit too long or short. You don't have to be too finicky about it. Yes, that is a word. So that's covered my band quite nicely now. I'm going to pick up my loop again. And actually I don't need, normally I would put that on perhaps a little bit earlier and I have to do a couple more rounds, but I don't think I need to. I think I can just do my closing rounds now. So for the first one, I'm going to decrease over the next 2 stitches. So if you remember from before, it's a bit more difficult to see because I've got this other bit in the way. I wonder if I can hold that out of the way for you. That's got it so you can see it a bit better, I think. Yeah. So I've still got my 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 stitches on the hook. So this is the first one I'm going to go into, and I'm going to decrease 1 stitch over the next 2 stitches. So over these 2, I'm going to make these 2 into 1. So I'm going into the first one, still working with double crochet all the way through. 1, but I'm not completing that double crochet stitch. I'm going into the next one, pull the loop through again, and now I'm completing my yarn around hook and pulling it through all 3 loops on the hook. So I've made those 2 stitches into 1, and then I'm doing 1 double crochet in the next stitch. Now I'm repeating that sequence. So 1 into the next stitch, 2, and then pulling the yarn through all 3 loops on the hook. This is a bit more fiddly when it's on this bit. It's not quite so fiddly if you're not trying to do it at arm's length in front of a camera. And one more to finish it off, and you can see it's almost closed itself up now. There's just a small hole left, so I'm just going to slip stitch across like I did before, just by pulling the, oops, I can't get this right, hang on. So I'm just going to slip stitch across like I did before, just by pulling the loop through and then pulling it through again to fasten off. And I promise you it's a lot easier than I made it look when you've actually got it up, you know, in front of you properly. And again, I would weave the ends in and take the opportunity to close any last little bit of holes there. So that's the band already. Now the other bit I've got here is this cable, and I haven't, you could crochet, you could do a long strip of crochet, a long chain, and then just do a double crochet into each chain to make it, but I thought it's quite nice to do a twisted cord so it looks more like a cable. So I'm going to get some of my grey wool. Okay. So I've got 2 meters, I've folded it in half, I'm going to knot it at one end, and I'm going to secure that end to something. I could tape it to my desk, I could wrap it around a chair leg, get a friend to hold it. In this case I'm going to try, but I've got some glue up in front of me here which I think will hold it. That will do. And then now I can't show you all of this because I haven't got the scope of my camera, but basically I'm going to hold this taut, and then at the halfway point I'm going to put my crochet hook in. It could just as well be a pencil or a piece of dowel, chopstick, anything, something that will just make this a bit easier. And I'm going to use that to twist. So I'm going to kind of twist like this. And it takes a little while, but it's not too bad. And I'm going to keep twisting until these 2 lengths of yarn are twisted together completely. I'll show you what I mean when I get there. You see, it's, I mean, this is real time now, so you can see it happens reasonably quickly. But I want it quite closely twisted. It's easier to do it standing up with it stretched out in front of you, but I'm a bit hampered by having to do it for the camera here. So that's almost enough already, you see, so it doesn't take too long. Okay. And the more you twist it, the tighter a cord you'll get at the end. So just depends on what you're going for, really. Quite happy for it to stay reasonably chunky. So once I got that as twisted as I want, I'm going to find about the halfway point, and I'm going to take hold of it like that, and then bring the 2 ends together like that. So I've got the halfway point ish, and I've got the 2 ends, and then I'm just going to kind of let go, let them ravel together on their own naturally as they will, and then just smooth it out, and you end up with this twisted cord. I need to just tie a knot to fasten them all together at that end. And then cut that off neatly. And then all I did here was just wrap it around. I will have woven in the ends. I won't waste time doing it now, because I'm sure you'll be able to work that out. And then I started off with the ends on the inside of the headband, and what I did was, just because this is quite open, this cover that I've crocheted, I just poked this knot inside one of the holes. There we go. So that's all tucked inside now, and I can just secure that with a stitch or a bit of glue. Actually, if you didn't want to bother stitching, you could do it with glue, just to secure it there. And then I just twisted this around. 3 or 4 times, and just adjusting it so that it ends up on the inside again. So it just took a little bit of finagling to make that sit nicely. And then again, tuck the end away on the inside and secure it with a stitch or some glue. So now that's just ready for all the lights to go on. So let's see how this one is doing that I just glued. You see, that's going to need a bit longer to be really firmly glued. So all I'm going to do is glue these on here, and then set this aside to give it a good few hours to dry. So I think I'll put the red in the middle, yellow, blue. I'm going to do them like that. So the centre is roughly there. I'm going to put the red one there. Obviously you want to look more or less that they're kind of attached to the cable, so that would work like that. Oh good, the glue's not going to come out at all now. You could hot glue it as well, actually, that would be quick, wouldn't it? Or you could stitch them, I guess. Right, that one's going to go on there. That one there. And I'm not going to attach them to the actual cable because I don't think it'd be secure enough. I'm attaching them to the crocheted band, but sort of right next to the cable, so they look as if they might be attached. I was going to attach this bit to my thumb instead. There we go, let's set that to one side. So that's the Christmas lights one done. And I meant to mention, obviously you could tart this up a lot more if you wanted to. You could put some little bells on it. I've got other bits and bobs here of rescue bits and pieces. You could put little twinkles on it. You could put some tinsel around it, holly leaves, bows. I've got some different colours of stickles here. So I could do that now actually on that side, just so you can see what it looks like. Just put some little dots of stickles. And that just gives them a little bit of a, this will dry clear. Just rub it in, couldn't you, just so it's just more sort of all over glitter rather than dots of it. Just whatever, we'll see what they look like when they're dry. Right, so I'm going to do the reindeer headband next. So first thing to make is the ears, starting in the same way as before. So with a magic ring, MR magic ring, tail end of the yarn towards me, wrapping it over my 2 first fingers to make a cross, going under that bottom piece of yarn and over the top one, pulling a loop through, and then yarn around the hook and pulling it back through that loop to make my chain, 1 chain. And there's my ring ready to go. And now I'm going to do the 4 double crochet, or single crochet if you're American. 2, 3, 4. Hold onto this gently and pull the ring, pull the tail end to close the ring. So for round 1, I'm just going to put my stitch marker in that last stitch. For round 1, we're going to start increasing, so I'm going to do 2 double crochet in the next stitch, then 1 double crochet in the next stitch, and then repeat that sequence once. So this is my first stitch in the round, so 1 double crochet, back into the same stitch, 2 double crochet. In this next stitch I'm just doing 1 double crochet, and now I'm repeating the sequence, so 2 double crochet going into this same stitch. Now we've come to the last stitch in the round, and I'm just doing 1 double crochet in that. So put my stitch marker in that last stitch, and I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 stitches. And at the end of round 1, I've got the number 6 in brackets, so that's all hunky-dory. So round 2, I'm increasing again. So this time the instructions in brackets, you can see there, are 2 double crochet in the next stitch and then double crochet 2. So this is the first stitch in the round. I'm going in there, doing a double crochet, back into the same stitch, another double crochet, and now I'm doing 2 straightforward double crochet over the next 2 stitches, like that. Now I'm repeating that sequence because it says repeat once. I'm repeating that sequence, so this is my next stitch, so I'm going 1 double crochet, another double crochet into the same stitch, and then 1 double crochet in each of the last 2 stitches in this round. So now I should have 8 stitches in the round. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Yes. So round 3, I'm doing 2 double crochet in the next stitch and then double crochet 3. So I'm going 1, 2 in the same stitch, and then 1 in the next stitch, 1 in the next stitch, 1 in the next stitch. Now repeating the sequence, 2 into this stitch, 1, 2, and I've got 3 left in the round. I'm doing 1 stitch in each of them. 1, 2, 3. So now I will have 10 stitches on my hook, and there's a number 10 in brackets at the end of that round. So that was round 3. Rounds 4, 5, 6 and 7 continue in the same way, increasing a couple of stitches every round. So I'm going to speed this bit up. Okay, last row before we start decreasing again. So this ear pattern for the reindeer is the same as the large leaf pattern, which is used for the poinsettia. The elf ears are a bit differently shaped, given more point at the top and more shape at the bottom. But essentially, this large ear, the large leaf for the poinsettia, and the smaller leaf for the poinsettia are all the same. Just the numbers are slightly different. And as I said, it's pretty much double crochet or American single crochet all the way through. Nothing difficult, really. The main secret, really, is using that stitch marker. Okay, so that's rounds 8 and 9 done. So you can see we've shaped the top of the here. And now we're going to start decreasing. So for round 10, I'm decreasing 1 over the next 2 stitches, then doing 7 double crochets. So this is just the same as we did before. These are my first 2 stitches, and I'm going to turn those 2 stitches into 1 basically. So working in double crochet again, I'm going through like that, but I'm not pulling through to complete the stitch. I'm going into the next stitch, and now I'm pulling through all 3 stitches, all 3 loops on the hook to make that into 1 stitch. And then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then I repeat that sequence once. So these next 2 stitches I'm decreasing 1 again. Start double crochet but don't complete it. Go into the next stitch, start my double crochet, and then complete by pulling through all 3 loops on the hook. And then 7 double crochet again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. So I'm on to round 11 now, and I'm decreasing over the next 2 stitches again. So I'll do this once more, and then I'll work through to the end again. Starting a double crochet but not completing the stitch, going into the next stitch, starting my double crochet, and then completing by pulling through all 3 hooks. All 3 hooks, all 3 loops on the hook. And this time I'm going to double crochet 6 between 1, go in, 2, 3, I've lost my thingy, keep counting, 4, don't panic, 5, 6, and I've got to repeat that once. I must not lose count because I've lost my stitch holder now. So I'm decreasing again, 1, 2, and now I've got to do 6 again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Put the stitch marker in, and let's just do a quick count because obviously I dropped my stitch marker there part way through. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 at the end of round 11. Yes, that's right. So I'm going to keep following my pattern and decreasing until I get to the point where I've only got 2 stitches left on my hook, and I will close with a slip stitch. So we'll just speed through that again. There we go. So now I've finished my decreasing, and I'm just gonna close with a slip stitch and fasten off. So I would then weave my ends in, make another one, and this will just get stitched onto my headband. Then I'm going to make all the pieces for this. The band is essentially the same as this one, carrying this band. That's because it's another narrow band I've used for this one. The antlers are a bit different, so let's do the antlers. So I'm going to make 2 of the longer pieces and 2 of the shorter pieces. Starts again exactly the same way, and really these are very much like the headband cover, so they're just shorter and you don't close them off at one end. So start the magic ring the same way as before with my 1 chain and 4 double crochet into the ring. 1, 2, you know this now, 3, pull, pulling on the tail to close up the ring. And exactly like we did to do the headband cover really. So 1, 2, 3, 4, that's my first stitch. So I'm increasing here, so I'm going to put 2 double crochet into this first stitch. And then 1 into the next stitch, 2 into the next one, and 1 into the last stitch in the round. Mark that last stitch. One, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Good. Now I carry on just like I did with the headband. I'm just going to put 1 double crochet into each stitch. I don't really need the marker now actually, because a bit like the headband, I'm just going to keep going in rounds until it's as long as I need it to be. So just 1 double crochet in each stitch. The only way you would need to use a stitch marker is if you're not too sure of yourself yet and you want to just keep checking to make sure you're not accidentally increasing or decreasing. So you could just keep counting the rounds just to keep an eye on it. But if you just sort of take it slowly, take care to make sure you're going into each stitch just the once and doing a double crochet, you should be fine. Right, so that's measuring about 10 centimetres at the moment, and it's longer than this, but it will, as I stuff it out, it will get squatter, shorter and fatter. So I'm quite happy with that length for my main piece, my longer piece of my antlers. So I'm just going to pull through the yarn completely through that last stitch on the hook to fasten it off, and then I'm going to start stuffing it, which is a little bit fiddly, and it probably would help to have something to poke it with, like one of these kind of things, or a chopstick or something like that. And you want to pack it reasonably firmly so that it will kind of stand up under its own steam when you attach it to the headband. And you want to make sure it goes right to the very tip. Surprising how much stuffing it takes. So that's about the right length for that. Pull that thread through to fasten off, and I'm gonna stuff this in just the same way. That's all I would do there. What I would do is weave in this end and this end, but I'd leave this end attached because that's useful for, you can just use that for stitching it onto the band, and then I'd leave this end attached because you can use it for stitching it onto the other part of the antler. So they would stitch on like that. I don't think I need to sit and show you that. You can see where I'm going. And the only other thing that's any different is the holly. I've made a little template for my holly leaf, which I will include in the little kits. All I'm going to do is draw around this. I might as well use this piece up. I'm just using a pencil to draw around it. If you want to make your own holly leaf template, you just have to fold a piece of paper in half so that you get it reasonably symmetrical. cut your scallopy shapes, and then when you unfold it, you've got a lovely holly shape. So that's one leaf. I'll just show you one. I don't want this video to end up being ridiculously long. I think it's going to be a bit ridiculously long already. I just think if I can just sort of explain the bits that you might not have seen before if you're a beginner to crochet, all the bits that might not make sense from my explanation on the pattern and the instructions, even to someone who has done a lot of crochet before. As I say, it is quite difficult to just put things into words sometimes, and I think it helps to just fold it in half first and give it a really good kind of press with the, I'm just using the back of my thumbnail, but you could use something like one of these bone folders or something just to give it a good old crease to start with. And I mean, you could just, you know, you could just leave it like that, but I thought a little bit of stitch detail might be nice. So I've got some of this green embroidery thread, and we will put a little bit of this in the kit as well. So again, it's nice that you haven't got to buy a whole thing just if you just want this little bit. Let's use one of these again. I'm just gonna make things easier on myself and just make a little knot. To start me off, I'm starting from the wrong side. That bit's going to be hidden anyway, so it really doesn't matter. And I'm just making a little kind of small double stitch first. Just like that. Reasonably small and neat, but not too, don't need to be too fussy. And then I'm just running a small, just running stitch along that centre line. And now I'm going back down the same line in between those stitches. So where the gaps were between the running stitches, I'm now filling them in. So I'll end up with one continuous row. And now, of course I've got it about sort of halfway down like that, and now I'm going to pull on those stitches, and they will start to pull the leaf into a kind of crinkly curve shape, which I think looks quite nice for holly. And if you're patient, you can just kind of control the crinkle a little bit and the curve, and each one will come out different. So I think I've got enough crinkle in it. I'm going to keep on stitching and then just fasten it off at the back with another little double stitch. Just make a put the needle through the loop before you pull to make a little knot, and I'm just going to cut that off because that's all going to be hidden anyway. So now I can just take a little bit of time to just adjust my crinkles. There. I think it just makes it look a bit more interesting than just a flat leaf. So I will make another one like that. That will get those the two leaves will get attached to the centre of my headband between the antlers, and then I will just add some little red beads, which will also be in our kits. But you could, you know, if you were doing this at home and you haven't got beads like that, you could put some buttons there. You could put you know, if you've got things like, you could put bells would be good. If you've got things like this things like this knocking around, you could put something like that there. You can put whatever you like there instead, or just a bow or something, you know. See what you've got knocking around. That's what I always do. So that's, I think, all I need to show you on the antlers, on the reindeer. I think the instructions will be fairly self-explanatory other than that, but as I said, if you've got any questions at all, please leave them in the comments and I will make sure I do my best to answer them for you. So with the poinsettia, this is very straightforward. The ear, the reindeer ear that I've already shown you, is the same pattern essentially as the large leaf shape on the poinsettia. So you make 5 of those in the green, and then you make 5 smaller ones in the red. Just follow the instructions exactly the same way as I showed you. There's been no need for you to sit and watch me do the same thing in 2 different colours. So you make 5 of those, and I can show you with this. You pinch them together at the bottom, and then you add the next one and the next one on the next one, put them all together into a flower shape, layer them up like that, and I like to sort of offset them a bit like that, so they're not directly one under the other, they just kind of offset a little bit. And then I just stitch 3 bells into the middle. Again, that could be beads, or you could put I had some stars actually I thought might look nice. They didn't end up making the cut. Oh, don't know where they've gone now. But yeah, you could put a star in the middle, a button. You could just get a piece of felt and make a little yellow ball to go in the middle, because they're kind of yellow in the middle really, aren't they? I think poinsettias. But the bit I do, then I just glued this on. This is just glued on again with this kind of glue. Was it this one? I think I used this one. But I mean, I think they would both work. I think the thing I really could do with showing you though is how to actually cover this headband. I'm going to do this 40 centimetres long by about 3.5 wide. I just cut a long strip. Okay, so I've got my strip of felt. Should have cut it a bit more carefully than that really. And that's plenty long enough and just about wide enough to overlap slightly at the back to get a nice neat finish. Obviously if you were doing this with a different size of headband, you'd need to adjust accordingly, and I found that the easiest way to attach this was with strong double-sided tape like this. So I'm going to run this double-sided tape along the inside of my band. So I'm just going to peel that tape off. And I'm not going to worry about sticking it to this side, because I think as long as it's stuck on the back it will stay stuck on the front as well. And I'm just going to, as I go along, just fold this edge in like that. So I'm going to go all the way along quite carefully. Might be easier just to do like that. Now I'm going to flip this over. And then I'm going to glue it. Now felt can be a bit tricky to glue. Even 4 centimetres would have been better for this, because this hasn't given me too much overlap in the end. I have to pull it quite taut, so maybe 40 centimetres by 4. I know I end up having to trim some off either end, but I think it's better to have it a little bit too long, because it's, you know, easy enough to trim that extra off. There we go. So one little tip I discovered to help it stay in place while the glue is setting is to have some thread, or you could use more of the wool actually. So let's get some of the glue ready. I'm going to run this glue along this outer edge, so the edge that is still overhanging. And it's not going to take a massive amount of strain or anything, and by the time we've got the tape and everything on the outside, that will help to hold it all in place anyway. So let's start. So rolling that end over. Wind the thread around a couple of times just to help hold it in place while the glue sets. This can come off afterwards, or it could stay on, really, it won't hurt. The felt is just to give it padding, you're not going to see it. You could use wadding or something instead if you happen to have that. So I'm just folding the felt over and wrapping the thread around it as I go. There we go. Just put that through that loop to make a little bit of a knot so it doesn't come undone too quickly. And get those really long ends. Right, so that will hopefully keep that in place long enough. For me to get all the other bits on. So the next layer that I used was some bias binding, which is nice because it's got, well, it's obviously got a raw edge at either end, but down the sides it hasn't. So, but you could use fabric and just, you know, you could make your own, in effect, bias binding. But so I've got about 1 metre here. I'm going to cut 2 pieces off about 5 centimetres each, about there. And these are just to cover the ends, because I found that it's quite an awkward shape to cover this. I didn't want the bare plastic bits showing at the end. So I'm just going to open this out, put the end in about halfway up, close that over, and then I'm folding it over like that, so that sort of encloses it all. It's not perfect, but it's a lot, it's the neatest way I found. You can see there, by the time you've got the other ribbon on, it doesn't really show. And it certainly looks a lot nicer than having those plasticky bits hanging out. So I don't need to worry about the raw edges here because they're all going to be covered anyway. Right, that'll do, that'll hold it. So again, opening out, resting the end in it, closing those sides over, and then folding this end down. There. So that's all going to be held in place. Next step is to use the rest of this binding, or probably pretty much most of it, to wrap around and cover the piece entirely. So I'm going to tuck my raw ends in because I don't want them showing. And then I'm just going to start diagonally. Let's just do one wrap first, just to start it off. There we go. Right. And the other nice thing about the bias binding is because it's cut on the bias, it will go around a curve nicely. So it's a little bit lumpy there, but that will get covered by the ribbon in the end, so I'm not going to worry about that. I'm just going to work my way around this, wrapping diagonally and not leaving any gaps for that white felt to show through. There we are, got to the end, and now I'm just kind of slightly changing direction to finish off. And I want to finish on the inside. I'm gonna just tuck the raw edge in and folding over like that. Put a little bit of glue along there. And using my thread trick to keep it together while it sets. The final bit of this covering this band is the more decorative ribbon. So I'm just going to tuck my ends in. I like to fold them to a little point like that first and then fold it down, then you haven't got those bits sticking out the edges. So from that side you can't see them at all. So I need to re-glue that. Bit glue there. Right, and starting off sort of quite straight across. That's for the first couple of wraps like that. And then when it all feels fairly secure, I'm going to start changing direction and go more diagonal. And I'm not covering closely this time. I want to leave gaps in between to show the red underneath. And I experimented with various ways of covering these because you want them a little bit padded as well to make them more comfortable to wear. And this was the one I found worked best, apart from just covering it in crochet. That's quite comfortable as well. And probably quicker than this. Right, so I've come to that end. So now I'm gonna just encourage the ribbon to kind of go straight again. At the end. Tuck those ends under as neat as I can. Get the glue on first, shall we? There we go. So I've got those raw edges all tucked under, and I just want to hold everything. It just occurred to me that a quicker way than wrapping the thread around would just be to use an elastic band, but I don't have one to hand, so but that would be an idea to try. Right, let's just wrap this around a few times. So this thread now will have to come off afterwards, of course, once it's all dry. So that's yeah, that's the band all nice and neatly covered, and then I would just add my poinsettia on. Like I say, I just glued that. You could also definitely add sequins or little stars or extra decorative trim on there, and you could definitely make one of these up to match an outfit, you know, going to Christmas parties or New Year's or whatever. Make a nice headband to match your outfit. You could put little gemstones along there, you could do all sorts of things. I'm going to do some beaded ones in the new year. I've got a bit more time. So that's that one. I think that's all I need to show you with that. So the only one we haven't looked at yet is the Elf one. So that's made on a wide band. I don't think there's anything new. I'm looking at the ears pattern and I don't think there's anything new here. It's pretty much the same process, except there's a longer pointy bit there, so they're just, you know, the increase and decrease pattern is different, but as long as you follow the instructions it will be fine. As before, please, if you've got any questions, say so. One thing I would point out with these is not to make the mistake that I did of putting the ears up here, because actually when you put it on your head that looks all weird. It's like you've got 2 layers of ears and these are way too high, so you put them up there for the animal ones, but not for these. You put them right down so they're pretty much level with the bottom ends of the band. So yeah, I don't think we'll worry about the ears or the band because they're pretty much the same as we've already done, but let's do the hat and the hat trim. So the hat trim is quite fun to do actually, and you can also make candy cane decorations and things with it. So we're not starting with a magic ring this time, we're just going to make a chain to start off with, and we're going to work in rows, not rounds. So let me show you properly in case you've not done that before. So we're just going to start off with a little slip stitch. So I'm making a loop like that. So this one is on top, and then I'm just bringing a loop. I'm not pulling the whole end through, I'm just pulling the loop through like that. So let me show you again. So left over right, and then I'm pulling that loop back through the hole, and then when I pull this tail end I can just pull up the loop and pop my hook in. So that's my slip stitch, that's the beginning of my chain. So now I'm going to chain 50. So to make the chain, I've got my hook in my right hand, I'm tensioning my yarn here with my left index finger, and I'm just put my yarn around my hook, and this is the way I do it. I think different people have different styles, but this is what I do. I go like that to get the yarn around my hook, and then I pull a loop of it through that loop on the hook, that's in my left hand. So I put the yarn around the hook and pull a loop through. Yarn around the hook, pull a loop through. So 1, 2, I'll start again now because I lost count. Okay. So I've got to do 50. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 48, 49, 50. So I've got a chain of 50. Now normally we would just do, for our starting row, we'd probably just do 1 stitch of some kind into each of these chains. But to make this trim I'm going to put 2 double crochet into every single stitch in this chain. So I'm going to start with the second stitch from the hook. So where's my pointy thing? So I'm not counting this one. That's the first stitch from the hook. This is the second stitch from the hook. That's the one I'm going to go into. And then I'm going to do double crochet again. So yarn around the hook, pull it through one of the loops, yarn around the hook again, pull it through both loops. Oh, nearly went wrong. And then instead of moving on to the next stitch, as I nearly did, I'm going back into the same stitch and doing another double crochet. Move into the next stitch, doing 1, 2, double crochet. Next stitch, 1, back into the same stitch, 2, double crochet. 1, 2. And what you find, because you're increasing as you go along, is the work starts to naturally curl into a spiral like this. And it's a lovely thing. You can use it for making things like horses' manes or unicorn manes or doll's hair. Really, really. And one nice thing to do with these, because I'm going to do one of these in red and one in white, and then twist them together. You can, if you do slightly shorter lengths, you can run a pipe cleaner through it or a piece of wire and hook the top over and make candy canes, which is quite fun. Or you can make little wreaths, something I've seen online. I thought was a fun idea. So this will take me a few minutes. I will speed through and come back and see you when I'm there. Fasten that off like we did before. Just pull the yarn through that last loop. And there we are, that's my piece. So it's naturally, as I say, it just naturally curls. And then, you know, you have to, you sometimes have to encourage it into the right direction. If you find there's a bit that isn't curling at all, it's sort of just lying straight, it means you haven't been doing 2 stitches into each of the chains. Unfortunately, you will have to pull that back and do it again. That's happened to me a couple of times where I just lose concentration a bit. Just start going one into each stitch on automatic pilot. That looks quite cute just like that. You can see how it would work really well. A whole bunch of them would work really well for like a horse's mane or doll's hair or something. But when you then do one in a contrasting colour and twist them together, it looks really cool. Okay, so what I would do now is weave those ends in out of the way, and then I would just twist these together, and you can see how you start to get that lovely candy cane effect. So there's my not quite finished candy cane, because I need to tidy that up, but that's what you need to do. And then you just arrange it around the hat and either glue it into place or put a few stitches in to secure it. Like I say, you could put you could wrap this around a pipe cleaner or put a piece of wire up through it and make a little candy cane decoration, or you can turn them into little mini wreaths like that with a bow at the top. That's quite a nice idea, I thought. Anyway, so that's that, and then the last thing I wanted to show you was the hat. So to start the hat, I'm making a magic ring again, just like before, and doing the 1 chain and the 4 double crochet into the ring. 1, 2, 3, 4. And if you're new to this, don't think that you always do 4 double crochet into a magic ring. It could be any number of stitches into the magic ring, but it just has worked out right for these patterns. So putting my stitch holder in that last stitch before the hook. 1, 2, 3, 4. So that's my first stitch, and I'm not increasing this time because this hat's got a skinny end to it, so we're not increasing straight away. I'm just putting a double crochet into each stitch in the round. So that's 1. Next stitch, 2, next stitch, 3, and the last one in this round, 4. Stitch holder in. So round 2 we are going to start increasing. We're going to go back to the old 2 double crochet in the next stitch and then 1 double crochet and repeat the pattern and end up with 6 stitches. So remember, so I've got 1, 2, 3, 4. There's my first one. So I'm going to do 2 double crochet into this one stitch. 1, 2. And then 1 double crochet in the next stitch. Oops, I missed that. 1 double crochet in that next stitch. There we are. And then repeating the sequence, so I'm going to put 2 into this stitch. 1, 2, and then just 1 double crochet in the last stitch of this round and mark that last stitch. So now I've got 6 stitches on in my round. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So this is round 3, and I'm just going to go round putting one double crochet into each stitch. 2, 3, 4, 5, and the last stitch in this round, 1 double crochet in there. So we're getting a bit more of a long, you can see that long pointy end to the hat forming now. So now we're on to round 4. So we're going to do 2 double crochet in the next stitch and then a 2 double crochet, and then repeat once to end up with 8 stitches. Now I should have 8 stitches. So 1, 1, let's do it so you can see it. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So this is just, you know, following through the pattern as before. So I'm going to work through this and then come back and show you just how to finish the hat at the end, because that's the bit that's different really. I'll speed through this bit and come back to you. I ended up with 32 stitches in the round, and the last 4 rows, or 4 rounds rather, have just been double crochet in every stitch, not increasing or decreasing. So this is the point where if you wanted the hat a little bit taller, you could do 2 or 3 more rows if you like. So that's it. I'm just coming to the end of that last row now. This is the last stitch. And this is the point where we stuff it, but not don't want it too firmly stuffed, just sort of very lightly stuffed to give it a little bit of body. I think that's probably enough, just quite loose really. Don't need to stuff it into the point. That will just sort of flop down nicely once it's got the weight of the bell on it. And then when it's stuffed, just hold it flat like that. This is the bit I wanted to show you. And then I'm just going to slip stitch all the way along here. So if I hold it together like that, you can see the stitches line up together quite nicely. So I'm just going to put my hook through one loop from one edge and one loop from the other edge, and just pull. Oops, let's try that again, shall we? And pull the yarn through all 3 loops on the hook, and then I'm going for another pair, and again pulling the yarn through all 3 loops on the hook. So I've got 1 on the hook, pick up 1 more loop from each edge, pull the thread through, snip that off, pull the end through to fasten it, And that's the hat. So now what the bit I wanted to show you is I wouldn't just stitch it like that flat onto the band. What I do is like push this little crease in like that, so it makes a kind of a flat base, and then that will sit quite nicely onto the band with the trim around it. Oops, I've got enough hands there. Can kind of see the gist of it. I think I've run through a little bit of everything there, and with that and the pattern and the instructions, it should be easy enough to follow along. I will finish these off and take some photos of them and put photos at the end as well, so you can get a nice clear picture of what you're aiming at if you fancy having a go at these. I hope you do. Leave me a comment with a link or something if you do. I'd love to see pictures or something if you have a go at these, or put your own spin on them. You know, I'll leave you with which one? I'll leave you with this. I wonder if I could put on more than one. Oh, and let's have a look at our Christmas light one. So that's what this one looks like. Yeah, I think that is my favourite. Definitely needs more twinkles as well. I'm going now. I hope you enjoyed that. Thanks for watching today, and please don't hesitate to leave any questions in the comments, and I'll be very happy to try and help. I will see you again really, really soon. Bye.